welcome again to another exciting episode of Mr. Card's Basement Lessons on Disease. I don't know. I thought I would just show you around a little bit. This is basically like my guest room office, all important people in my life. And so I'm just sitting here trying to give you guys a few lessons. Let me get that settled again. Okay, so now what I want to do is give you viruses, the basics, okay? So in our last episode, I talked about kind of the history of disease a little bit and showed you a timeline of viruses. And so now I want to go back and I'll just go back for a second and show you some of those bigger viruses, right? And so the whole point I made was that we don't want COVID, which right now is just a little baby. This coronavirus is a little baby one. We don't want it to become larger like these other pandemics that we've had, right? Okay. So, first of all, what are viruses? Well, viruses, first of all, are very small. They're 100 times smaller than the average bacteria. So, bacteria are totally different. So you have viruses and bacteria, which both make us sick. But when we're talking about coronavirus, it's a virus, not a bacteria. And keep in mind, antibiotics, right? You go to the doctor and get antibiotics. That can treat bacteria. But antibiotics do not treat viruses. And there's actually been a problem in the past few years of people going, just give me something. And the doctors like cave and they'll give somebody this antibiotic, which actually doesn't help. And it can actually make it worse. It can cause more resistance. So doctors got really careful a few years ago about just passing antibiotics out. All right, so basically, a virus can't even be seen with a basic microscope. You need an electron microscope to even see viruses. And this was actually a problem when HIV was starting because we didn't even have enough money in the United States to get the right equipment to even be able to try to find the virus and study it. Even that problem right there of even having basic equipment, if you have just a plain microscope, it's not going to work. You need special microscopes to actually be able to see it. Okay, viruses have to invade a cell to have influence. So if the virus is just sitting here, it doesn't matter. It's got to actually invade the body and get in the cells, okay? Because they don't have cellular structures by themselves, so they need something they need to invade the host. They can't replicate on their own. They need a cell to be able to replicate. And they basically are these little tiny packages of DNA or RNA, and they're genes in a protein coating, and they invade the cell and basically hijack that cell and turn it into a power plant, so to speak, to make more virus. So they look for a cell, they take over that cell, and then they use it to make more virus. All right, hope you've got that. Feel free to reach out if you have questions. Not claiming to be scientists, just trying to give you a little bit of basic how viruses work. Okay. So animal viruses first have, with a high host plasticity, you need a virus and a vector. So basically these viruses, that can infect different kinds of hosts. And those are animals. They can be bats, cats, monkeys, mosquitoes, fleas, cows, rats, pigs, chickens, right? Like any of those. And then there has to be a spillover of those viruses to that human. So there's a jump where you go from the virus to the animal that stays within animals, or there's a jump that comes where it goes to human. Now that one guy might get sick and that's it, or that might go where it amplifies from human to human. So now instead of the one guy getting sick and dying off, now it jumps and he passes it to other people and they pass it to other people. And then you've got global spread. And why it's so bad right now is because we have this massive international travel, right? Where we can go everywhere super fast, not really checking things, and then all of a sudden you've got a global pandemic, right? You'll have to excuse the yellow right here. It's an old projector, and it's kind of dying out. But I'm doing what I can in the basement. So, since we're not allowed back in the classroom, we're just going to have to do with what we've got. So, anyway, just wanted to explain why it was all yellow. All right, right here, what also is happening is that you have these rodents or birds, and they get a disease, and there's these tissue cysts of disease, and then those go to, like, let's say a cat who's hunting, and now it's in his fecal matter, and now that goes into these animals, and then they're contaminating whatever is like the grass or any of that, and then these guys eat that, and now that spreads to them, and then if you're eating that raw undercooked meat, it can go to that. It could contaminate vegetables like an E. coli outbreak, so it gets into all this. These guys give it back, right? And now all of those contaminated water and vegetables go to human consumption. So you've got some kind of virus, right? It can start here, it can move, it can start by itself, and it goes in this cycle and then goes out. It also could be like cats, right? They have contact with this litter box. Now I clean the litter box. Like when you're pregnant, you're never supposed to clean the litter box because you're opening yourself up to different kind of contamination, right? And then I might be giving it to that baby, or I might be giving it to each other, or it could get into the blood supply. That's what happened with HIV. And then you were giving blood transfusions and people were getting sick that way, okay? We weren't even testing blood, by the way, in this country for a really long time. So we do now, but for a long time that was not happening. Just kind of freaky. Okay, so basically what happens is you've got this virus. It is going to enter a cell in the body, and then the virus RNA invades the cell nucleus and takes over. And when it does that, the viral RNA changes the host cell to create more RNA that assemble more viral particles. So it basically hijacks the cell and turns it into a factory to make more virus, okay? And then new viral particles are released. Sometimes they destroy that cell, sometimes they don't. It just depends on the virus. And then that creates more virus in the body, and then it repeats itself, okay? And it continues to build in the body. So basically you've got these coronaviruses are common in animals. They're in pigs, domestic and wild birds, bats, dogs, cats, camels. They think this one could have been bats. They think this one also could have been camels. They're not really sure, right? But the coronavirus is already in those hosts, okay? And for some reason, right, the virus mutates and it makes a leap from those animals to the humans, right? And then whoever has those humans might have had close contact. They might have been butchering those animals, could have been touching those animals. No, aren't going to be able to know for sure. But then they're humans known as a disease reservoir. So it's going to stay there. Maybe a couple people get sick, but not everybody dies. But then somehow that transfer to humans, there's a mutation. And every time it's going through this process, let me go back. Every time it goes through this process, it mutates a little bit. This is part of the reason why we can't cure a virus, because it's mutating constantly. So like HIV, for example, there are, I think, 8 or 9 different versions. Okay, so if I find a cure for HIV, I've only found a cure for one version. So it's tricky because you've got to constantly be finding a way around that. And that's what makes viruses so hard to cure, is because they're constantly changing and mutating. And then those mutations occur, and then as that occurs, you've got more and more change, and now it can jump from one guy to being human to human. So how does a body fight a virus? Well, it has a natural defense. A cell can initiate RNA interference when it knows that there's a virus, so it can that'll decrease the influence the virus has genetically. So when it invades a cell, it won't actually have as much power. The immune system also kicks in when there's a virus, and it makes antibodies that stick to the virus, and it will stop it from making more virus. So the antibodies come in, attack it, and now the virus is like, I can't do anything. And that's how it stops it. And it takes your body a while to figure that out. So your body sends out these T cells, and T cells go out and they figure out what's going on. They release these T cells, and they work to kill the virus. But it takes them a while to find it and figure out how to fight it. And that's why it takes you a few days to get better, or a couple of weeks to get better. And depending on how much virus is in your body and how fast your immune system attacked it is going to depend on then how much virus is in your body and how long it takes you to get better, okay? So those T cells are what helps us fight off any kind of disease in our body. Antibiotics have no effect on viruses again, but I can have a vaccination, right, that will provide immunity. So how it works is I'm actually going to take a little bit of the virus, and I will give you get an injection, you put a tiny bit of the virus in your body, just a tiny bit, and all of a sudden the immune system goes, whoa, it's a virus, and it can fight it off fast because it's a tiny bit. But if I'm getting the virus from somebody coughing, it might be a different amount, or I don't, like doesn't have the right stuff that a vaccine has in it to kick off the immune system fighting it. Okay? So science has never cured a virus. Some small exceptions with HIV, and I will talk about that more in the next episode, but we've never cured a virus. You can, not in mass. So there's been a few cases where stem cell research, along with transplant and bone marrow, along with genetic mutation, have been able to stop it, but they're not sure that it's worked long term. And there's nothing like, here, take a pill and you'll be cured. No virus is like that, okay? And part of that is because it keeps replicating, and that's the tricky part. There are some medicines that can trick the virus, and that's how we fight HIV, for example, but we've never cured it, okay? But vaccinations will help. It takes a while to make vaccine. And I'm going to talk more about that later. I need to do a little bit more research to make sure I've got that all right before I try to throw that up on the wall here. So I hope this helps a little bit. I think that's it. Yeah. So hopefully that helped. Get a little more idea about how viruses work. A little bit more on how it helps our body. Again, you can see the importance that, like, if we want to stop something, all of us stepping in, right, and saying, okay, I'm not going anywhere. I don't want that little dot to become the big dot. So I have to quarantine myself. Because the more people out there with it, the more it amplifies, the more it mutates, the harder it is to fight. So we have to stay here, locked up in our houses, so that we can make sure it doesn't mutate as much, make sure the healthcare system has a chance to catch up, and that people with compromised immune systems or people with, any kind of elderly people or babies who have a higher chance of getting it don't have that access to us that are healthy and might have it, but not really feel sick. Okay? And so that's the key. So anyway, you're really being a superhero, if you want to look at it that way, of keeping the dots small. You're the superhero of small dots. That's what we want to be, superheroes of small dots. We want it to stay small so that it doesn't become large, so we don't all get sicker. With that said, it's hard. And I understand some people are in houses that are difficult. Sometimes it is challenging to be with our families for long periods of time. Sometimes for those of us who are alone, it's challenging to be alone for long periods of time. But either way, we all have to kick in and do our best. And so that's why tonight I was like, hey, let's still have school. I'm just going to start teaching and ask you to play along and learn. And hopefully it's giving you some stuff to think about. Not trying to be an expert. Don't have it all perfect. So you can go research, and I encourage you to research and find more information. Don't confuse everybody by posting 6 million things, though, because we don't want to totally confuse everyone. But keep asking questions, and we'll talk about HIV/AIDS because I really want you to understand how that pandemic kind of got out of control, so that maybe we make different choices. Because it really comes down to behavior. When you want to stop a virus, you have to stop behavior. With the plague, they had to stop behavior of people bringing their animals inside. They had to stop behavior of people all being together in the same place. So they learned these lessons, and if we can pay attention to lessons from those past epidemics, right, then we can make some better choices and stop this one. Okay, hope that helps. Feel free to reach out with questions. All right, bye guys.